Hello, I'm Brian Fox. Welcome to I Hate Rock Music, and this video is going to be about the band Stretch. They're another band that I think is really a solid band, really a great band with memorable tunes and the kind of things that stick with you. And they're firing on all pistons, and I just don't understand sometimes why they don't get much respect. And their records are not high-end collectibles. There seems to be a lot of them around, and all three of their original albums have been remastered and issued on CD. But there doesn't seem to be any reevaluation of the band. And I stand by the fact that I think they're a really solid band. I've got a lot of admiration for any band that can actually pull together a whole album of good tunes, good solid tunes, and Stretch certainly does that. They even had a huge hit with a song called "Why Did You Do It," 1975, but it still didn't salvage their career. So the band was Kirby Gregory on guitar, he used to be in Curved Air, Elmer Gantry on vocals, who used to be in a 60s band called Elmer Gantry's Velvet Opera that had one album. And then they traded out a couple of different rhythm sections. Steve Emery and Paul Martinez were a couple of the bass players, and Jim Russell and Jeff Rich were a couple of their drummers. But just a great, gritty blues rock. Some reviewers have described them as southern rock. They definitely have some American sounding rock to some extent. There's a certain amount of boogie quality to them. There's little snippets here and there that actually kind of remind me of Foghat. But they have quite a mishmash of influences on their album, but they hold together really well. Um, both the first two albums, Elastique, which came out in 1975, and then You Can't Beat Your Brain for Entertainment from 1976. Both start out with really great rockers. They really know how to rock. Very economical, no fuss, but solid arrangements. And Kirby's a great guitar player. Does some great slide work and some really tasty leads. And the chords got just enough crunch in them. They did a third album in 1977 called Lifeblood. That's a little more tempered than the first two, but it's still really solid. And they didn't change their sound too drastically in 1977, like a lot of rock bands. They were just kind of toning it down a little bit. Unfortunate trend. And then Elmer Gantry left. They made one last album in 1978 called "Forget the Past," and it's really unnecessary. Unfortunately, his vocals are so distinct and so excellent. And I want to make a point of mentioning that he really makes the band in a lot of ways because he just has such a distinctive and unique voice and a great voice. Not your typical blues shouter, although he has a lot in common with a lot of British blues shouters. But their biggest claim to fame and one of the weirdest stories is how they got together. Fleetwood Mac had a 1975 tour booked, and for contractual reasons, they had to fulfill that tour, and the entire Fleetwood Mac band was not available. So Mick Fleetwood was going to go out with these new recruits, including Elmer Gantry and Kirby Gregory. But he backed out and then disavowed anything to do with it, and that's how Stretch became a band. And they did go out and tour as Fleetwood Mac in the U.S., and of course, people were severely disappointed. But the members also have connections to a lot of British bands, like I mentioned already. Elmer Gantry's Velvet Opera, Curved Air. Paul Martinez was in a group called Hackensack. A later drummer, Craig Collinge, was in an infamous British underground band called Third World War, and Jim Russell was in John Mayall's Blues Breakers. So all these guys have a real pedigree, and I know in the UK, particularly Elmer Gantry's well thought of. But the albums are just so solid. When they need to rock, they rock with a lot of conviction. And then they have a couple of funk numbers on each of the first two records, including their hit "Why Did You Do It," which kind of reminds me of the Climax Blues Band in some ways. But Snakes Alive is really funky in kind of a great humble pie sort of way. A couple of funky tunes on the first record and the second record. And then these just balls out rockers. Fixin' to Die opens up um, the one album, and it's great, just great slide work, all of it's recorded really well too, and they're just a crack band, as you would know from all the experience I've read off. That these guys are real players, and just no nonsense. And so there's a couple of funky tunes on each record, a handful of great hard rockers, a sparing of a couple of ballads, and then some really great blues infused tunes as well. And Kirby's an excellent slide guitar player, an excellent blues player, but they're definitely a straightforward rock band. I think if I would compare them to anybody, it would be Humble Pie. They just kind of have that same vibe, same influences going into their music, same taste of guitar work, and a really distinctive vocalist. And so I recommend them highly. As I say, they don't seem to get much respect, but check them out. As always, I'll have this stuff posted before. There's a great collection of BBC recordings, and they were just shit hot as a live band as well. Just a tad bit more energy than the studio recordings. So we got a fair amount of material from them, and they managed to put out 3 albums originally. They reunited, I think, in 2007 maybe, and they approximated their old sound in a lot of respects. But I'm a diehard. I really stick to the originals. I'm not really that excited about a lot of reunions. They always look good on paper, but um, they often lose that spark, and that's happened with almost every rock band you can think of. But Stretch, I think you should check them out if you haven't heard them. If you're a Humble Pie fan, or if you like just straightforward, no nonsense British rock bands with great guitar work and a crack band with some really distinctive vocals. And this is a band for you. And I also have to mention there's a song called Miss Dizzy that is just a beautiful pop gem and should have been a hit. And so they can actually do some decent pop oriented material as well, along with everything else. But with their eclecticism, they're still just a great, solid British hard rock band with checking all the boxes. So check them out. Stretch. I'm Brian Fox. Thanks for watching.